It's all about what's next.
Welcome. It is Manipulation Monday, and you know what that means. That means it's time for Andrew Hoffman. Andy, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I could see that you're a busy man today. We're going right at it.
Right at it. I mean, hey, I think really what we're looking at here, it's all about the Swiss. Whether the thing passes or not, this is just a meme where people are rejecting what their governments tell them. Look, Obamacare, okay? Series of videos come out. This guy Gruber, who's what would have been called during Kennedy's time an egghead, right? Intellectual academic who basically doesn't know anything about what it's like to live in the real world, because he's out there in MIT coming up with algorithms and formulas. If we don't pay this and we do pay that, and how many people will die, and all about Obamacare, and basically said the whole thing was a pack of lies, which guess what? Everyone knew it. And just the lies of government, they can't just hide them anymore, I think is what it is. And, these referendum that come up, like the Catalonia referendum and like the Scottish, freedom referendum, sovereignty referendum, just keep going down the line. I think that's what it all comes down to, is they could just no longer hide the lies. And
yeah, but this guy said, this Gruber, whatever his name was, it was so despicable. And it just shows, you talk about an Ed, that not only is he despicable, but he's too stupid to realize what an unbelievably stupid thing that was to say publicly, that we lied to the public and he laughed about it.
Yeah.
But again, it's at the point where the people who were voting last week, who voted out, a handful of Democrats in the Senate, it's like the world changed or it's going to matter. I mean, people are angry. And sadly, we're stuck with Obamacare. I mean, people could talk on. I think it would be more dangerous now to get rid of the process, the angst, of getting rid of it, the social unrest of keeping it. It's that bad of a position. You lose either way,
Well, with this guy in the White House, there is no practical way to get rid of it and put something in, because he's just not going to cooperate.
And he has executive orders for pretty much anything he wants to do.
Right. He's got a phone and he's got a pen and he can do what he wants, he thinks.
Yeah.
He's a dictator. It's a breakdown of democracy, whatever that was in the first place. We don't need to get into it. I just think this is a worldwide phenomena. You see it happening all over. Nobody is happy with their government. And really, when you look at these governments, they've given them what they wanted. All right. But it's impossible to give you, the people, what you want and have a solvent, functioning economy. It can't be done.
It's not just the referendums. Obviously, Scotland, Catalonia, where 81% of the people voted for secession, Venice, which eventually will do the same thing. And of course, we'll talk about Switzerland in a second. That's just part of it. I mean, we're talking about record low approval ratings of governments around the world, from the presidency and Congress here, from in Japan, in France. I mean, it's hard to believe that this Holland's only been around for 2 years and he already has the lowest approval rating in the history of France. I mean, they're literally on the verge of revolution, like 1789 over there. And, these are just a few examples. You can go around the world. And, and the sad thing is, as I've been writing forever, I wrote that the single most precious metal bullish factor imaginable, the 3 death trends last week. And we're talking about all this money printing is causing massive currency collapses the world round. I mean, this is only going to cause more inflation and more anger at governments and referendums, and nowhere more so than in Switzerland, where people, today I just wrote an article about, Thomas Jordan, this insane guy running the Swiss National Bank, his insane arguments for not wanting to have gold there. I've been writing about this every day for the last 3 or 4 days. They're saying it's too volatile. They're saying it's non-interest bearing, even though Swiss interest rates are negative right now, and the Swiss National Bank is promising to make them officially negative. They're talking about their only policy tool, their main policy tool to promote price stability is the peg with the euro. So in other words, printing money. They've now tripled their balance sheet in the last 3 years since the peg. Meanwhile, the euro and the franc have fallen together by 16%. And Swiss, not only is the Swiss GDP averaged a whopping 0.4% a quarter, meaning they haven't gained any market share against anyone. But their inflation, they call it deflation. Their CPI is flat, but their real inflation is so high that they had to vote a referendum this year about whether they should raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour. So again, you're talking about some real anger by the people. And, we're talking about the Swiss people who are the smartest financial people in the world. And they're being, the propaganda is off the charts, ridiculous. And, I do believe that this is going to pass. And when it does, there's a lot of skepticism out there about what may happen. But no, this is a game changer for the world. It's not just, Catalonia is some people in one region. We're talking about the entire world will take notice of the fact that gold is money. And to that matter, sorry to ramble, did you see this morning? I still am in awe. I can't believe that I read this. But, Draghi had a speech this morning, and he did his whatever it takes again. I promise we're going to monetize everything in sight. And then another one of the ECB board members, his name is Yves Mersch or something. He sounds French or Belgian or something. He literally said, if we need to do, we will do more unorthodox or alternative transactions for the ECB, including buying stocks, ETFs, and, drumroll please, gold. Can you imagine an ECB board member said that they may buy gold if the inflation expectations get too low? Do you know what this means to the world? What an affront this is to not only the Federal Reserve, but the Swiss National Bank at their time of need? Incredible, incredible splintering of the powers that be's views as the whole system gets ready to implode.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what can you say about it? After a while, it just becomes more of the same, right?
Well, I was speechless, and apparently you are too. Nothing prepared me for something like that, to hear a member of the ECB board talk about buying gold. Can you imagine what went into such a calculated statement? How much they were pegging that, they were aiming that at the United States, at Switzerland, potentially at the rest of the Euro board. At Goldman Sachs, Mario Draghi, to say that one of the biggest opponents of gold and silver would consider buying it.
Yeah, they've been selling it all this time. Now they're going to start to buy it again. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows what they really are?
Yeah, but you don't say things like that. Look, we know that everything that these guys really do, particularly the Fed, is below board. They say they're doing X, then they're doing Y. It's that simple. But what they do say is important. It's kind of like the economic data. The economic data is all fudged. Every piece of it is fudged. But when you see economic data that's bad, and wow, they're fudging it and it's still bad, it's the same thing kind of. If an ECB board member is out there saying we're going to buy gold, you don't say stuff like that unless there's a real meaning, and it's an ugly meaning. For the powers that be. There's no doubt in my mind that, this currency war, this final currency war that I've been writing about forever is now kicked into exponential gear between the ECBs. Remember, within the ECB, there are some people that are pissed off about this monetization. Then you have what's going on in Japan. You have what's going on in China where they're, with their peg. People are angry. And as a result, you're not only seeing the secessions, the things that get all the publicity, but clearly splintering between people that are supposed to be allies.
Oh yeah, yep. And hey, what about happened with Putin at the summit? He left early because they were abusing him, and he finally just said, "I'm not staying around for this." And he said he was tired and had to get back to business. But they had a full court press on the guy. And finally he said, hey, screw you, basically, right?
I've never seen anything like it. We talk about hubris every day. It's incredible, these attacks on Russia. It's one thing for us to do it because, we're looking for our scapegoat and we've always hated them. And heck, they're halfway around the world from us. But there's a lot of economic ties between Europe and Russia. Not the first of which is this natural gas that they need as we head into the winter. So why anyone in Europe would antagonize these people, the Russians, so powerfully is beyond me. You saw, and again, this is not Europe. This is the Canadian guy. The Harper. He wouldn't shake his hand. What are you, insane? You're a diplomat.
Yeah.
we're talking about Putin arrived with warships and he left early saying he was pissed off. I mean, there's a reason why he bought more gold this year than Russia's ever bought, and more gold last month than they've ever bought in a month, and why he's made all these de-dollarization comments and these holy grail natural gas deals with China and building this Sino-Russian bloc and rapid speed since all these ridiculous sanctions have picked up. I mean, there is going to be a real economic war. That's only going to be one part of it. It's kind of like the two front wars from World War I and II. This is going to be the multi-front war.
Yeah, and I just don't want to see what the fallout's going to be. It ain't going to be pretty. But supposedly this guy is sick, cancer. You heard that, and maybe they know something we don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could very well be propaganda. Why wouldn't we say he's sick? I mean, how would we know if he's sick? And and why wouldn't we say it anyway to try to make him weaker? And by the way, it's kind of like when we say, "Oh, we killed the leader of ISIS or we killed Bin Laden." What is there only one person in Russia who leads? Or is there one person who leads Al Qaeda? Like if Obama died, would there be no one else to lead America? There's millions of people. So who cares if he's a strong leader? But trust me, Russia's not going away and changing, no matter who's in charge. Just like the United States is not going to improve or worsen. It's just going to be the same horrible situation, no matter who is president or who runs Congress.
Yeah, that is true. Well, sometimes there are transitional leaders who really move countries to another level. I think Putin is that guy, and he would be hard to replace. But yeah, I mean, when you think you're always hearing key leaders of Al Qaeda killed, commander this, commander that, and it never seems to make any difference. So yeah, I know what you're saying, and will it matter? Who knows? But one thing you do know is that right now Putin is angry as hell, and hey, so is Obama. They dissed him pretty well too.
Yeah, well, people hate him. I mean, people hate America and they hate him. And what's most dangerous about Obama now is that he is a true lame duck. I mean, we'll be in 2015 in a month. The election's 2016. He doesn't have a majority anywhere. His approval rating is as low as it's going to be. So who knows what kind of evil he'll be up to. The one thing we do know is he'll be less incentivized to BS about the economy. I'm sure it probably will work in his favor if things get weaker, so people can blame the Republicans that are in charge of Congress for the next election, because that's he'll probably spend most of his time in the next 2 years campaigning for Hillary Clinton.
I wouldn't count on that.
Or someone like her.
Probably Elizabeth Warren, my guess, but
she won't win.
Yeah,
no way.
Well,
she's too smart.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things going on in that cesspit called Washington, D.C., and never take anything for granted. No, I don't. I mean, again, it doesn't matter. But the incentive to manipulate economic data for the Obama administration is much less than it was. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing for him to run for. And in fact, if he hates Hillary Clinton, he may even be less inclined.
Actually, the incentive really is to make things look as bad as possible. Blame it on the Republicans, right?
Exactly. That's my whole point. That's their best chance of winning. Is if things get visibly worse, and I think that's going to be the Democrats' plan.
Yeah. Well, hey, so getting back, we got the Chinese bad debt. I mean, really, their numbers don't even begin to tell the story of how bad it really is. I mean, because what happens, like bad debt is manageable when the economy is expanding. When an economy starts to contract or grow slower, then, it quickly goes to hell in a handbasket, bad debt, right?
Yeah. Well, again, every piece of economic data that comes out is a lie, but nowhere more so than China, where they still purport 7.5% GDP growth when every measure of what's really going on in China is not just down, it's collapsing. I mean, all the commodity prices over there, the iron ore, the cement, the electricity usage, you name it. Even their PMIs are below 50, whereas we keep pretending ours are expanding in the mid 50s. So if they're showing you visibly, as they did this weekend, the biggest surge in bad debt in a decade, you know that it's for real. And and for that matter, we saw also again last night. This is only hours ago. Japan was supposed to have a 2.5% GDP growth in the third quarter, and what did they report? A 1.6% decline in GDP. So they are squarely now in recession territory after falling 7% in the second quarter. No doubt that's why they started their Abenomics 2 announcement a few weeks ago, knowing this was coming, and why they're going to delay the sales tax next year increase that was supposed to pay for Abenomics. I mean, we're talking about some significant dangers of hyperinflation in Japan in the very, very near term. And again, this currency war, the ramifications of that announcement, coupled with what the ECB announced, are catastrophic for the world. I mean, you look at the currencies, I'm looking at my screen, and everything is in free fall against the dollar. Not that the dollar is doing so well. The plight of the United States is not improving. It's not like Americans are traveling left and right to Japan and Europe. It's just we're talking about inflation around the world from collapsing currencies, which is only going to make people more angry at their central banks, at their politicians, more referendums. And really, I can't even imagine the ramifications if the Swiss do wind up voting yes, which right now, per the report that came out last weekend, the yeses are ahead.
It really could be the black swan that we've been waiting for. I mean, one black swan that I talked about with Danielle Park is oil going down to $75 a barrel. I mean, that is huge. That really is a black swan in the way that you never expected one.
Well, again, I was an oil analyst for 10 years, and by the way, if I still were an oil analyst, today's announcement that Baker Hughes and Halliburton are merging would be the center focus of my life for months, because I covered those companies for so many years. But look, I wrote an article a month or two ago called "Crashing Oil Prices Portend Unspeakable Horrors," and while everyone was still talking about, well, gas prices are falling, that's so great, I said that's a pittance compared to the whole budget of Americans in general, and what the ramifications to the economy and the world economy are of falling oil prices. I mean, let's face it, just in America alone, we got two businesses that even purport to have an increase in GDP, an impact on GDP. One has been high-end housing because of all the money that was printed and given to Wall Street, which clearly rolled over. It is undeniably, it rolled over a year ago and it's going down. We're having year-over-year decreases every month right now. It's dead. The whole housing thing, dead, dead, dead. The other thing, shale oil, okay? Shale oil, most of which is unprofitable at the current prices. And actually, it's probably way unprofitable because of the massive amount of debt that these companies are in. They're the highest component of high-yield debt in the entire country because Wall Street took all the free money and forced it down the throats of all these shale companies that need more and more money for capital expenditures to drill the 10 zillion wells they need to maintain production, which isn't even profitable at the current prices. So, we have a double whammy of the only two businesses that were positive going into the hole. And man, I mean, if you see $70, $60 oil, I can't even imagine the 2008-like debt catastrophe that's going to hit this country. And remember, it's not just here. The whole world, all these socialist countries in OPEC, including Saudi Arabia, with its $5 and $10 costs of production, have costs of $100 or more to fund their socialist societies. So you'll have social unrest over there.
Oh, it's just an absolute nightmare. And
I mean, Saudi the other day, remember, they cut their prices on exports to the States, but maintain them for the rest of the world. They basically started a price war with the United States. And, remember, next week on the 27th, OPEC has a meeting. And right now, all these guys, you talk about splintering. I mean, they all hate each other now. OPEC is not what it used to be. And they may well not institute a production cut, as if most of them can do that anyway. And if they don't, you could see prices collapse to $70 in 2 seconds.
Well, they're on a brink. They're always on the brink of a war anyway, right?
They had more power. I remember back in the year 2000 or so when I was in the middle of my oil heyday, and every OPEC meeting was the equivalent of a Fed meeting, like the whole world was watching.
I know.
Now no one could care less because the only one with excess capacity is Saudi Arabia. So why do they even bother anymore having a meeting?
It's amazing how things change, It really is. And I wish them all the best. Not really, but
really.
They totally deserve whatever they get because they caused us enough grief. How many wars?
And again, everyone's got to remember Saudi Arabia, that swing producer. It's kind of like, as I've said, kind of like apartheid South Africa. You have a minority of American-loving people who run the country, and a giant majority of American haters that want those people out. And the worse that the fates of Saudi Arabian economy get, the more likely that majority takes over. And forget the petrodollar. The petrodollar is on the verge of dying anyway. We're talking about, just a flat out joining up with that Sino-Russian bloc and saying, screw you to America. I mean, that's coming.
Yep. That's for sure. And, just looking at the trends, as you say, the 3 death trends, impact of falling oil prices, collapsing currency, and expanding currency wars unless something happens really quick. I mean, we're just going down the rat hole here.
There's nothing to happen really quick. That's the beauty of it. We talk about when, I remember even a few years back where some of the people in our camp would, sometimes they're trying to be politically correct or, Peter Schiff's a perfect example. When he was still a politician, he'd say, well, these things are falling apart, but maybe if we do some things, it'll get better. And he, of course, had political motivations, which are no longer there. And then there are other people who think that it's smart to be optimistic, to say, yeah, well, if we just do something differently, if we cut spending and blah, 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 things get better. But, let's pass that. There's no one talking like that anymore because there's nothing left to do. Nothing can happen, certainly nothing quickly, and frankly, nothing at all. This is a death spiral. It's a Ponzi scheme. It must keep going until its end, and its end is now. Its end is now. The currencies will keep crashing against the dollar. Interest rates will keep going down, front running all the QE that's coming until hyperinflation eventually comes. And at some point, a major conflict of some sort, whether it's an economic one or a military one, is going to come. And, maybe it's these black swans that catalyze them, like Catalonia or the Swiss referendum, but something is going to happen. We can't have, as I call it, the chasm of destruction go much longer, where you have financial markets completely detached from reality.
Yeah, so what does happen, Andy, if the Swiss referendum passes? I mean, where are we going to be left then? I mean, that just will be a gut punch to the world economic system. And I mean, everybody's going to be scrambling for gold, I would think.
Well, I'd say I wish I knew, quote, what would happen. I could tell you that there will be a scramble for gold because they will have just legitimized, gold in a manner that hasn't been seen in generations.
Right.
I mean, I'm not even sure you can go back in history to when such a moment of realization, other than simply like a collapse, like a Weimar hyperinflation, where so many people at once will realize the legitimacy of gold and the illegitimacy of central banking. So, what will the near-term and long-term impact be? Difficult to tell, other than, we're already at this incredible moment where the attacks on paper gold have been so terrible in front of this that we're having record backwardization, record open interest in futures contracts, record depletion of inventories. They ran out of supply at the U.S. Mint. I mean, something really, really, big is going to happen, especially if this is a yes.
Yeah. And record demand for the Swiss franc. If it's partially backed, in my opinion, there's no way for a country to partially back the currency with precious metals. It's all or nothing.
For all intents and purposes, it will be fully backed because, first of all, if they have 1,040 tons to start with, I suspect that they've sold some of it. But that's number one. number two, they actually have the ability to buy some of this, because you know that the SNB will try to slow it down the process. Plus, there may not even be the gold out there for the buy at these prices. But let's say they are able to buy some of that gold. The price increase will make it 100% back. And more importantly, it will immediately. I mean, I'm talking about, if that vote's November 30th, December 1st, the Swiss franc is the most powerful currency on the planet, bar none. Yeah. Stronger than the Chinese yuan, stronger than anything. And, that's why the peg right now is sitting right at the peg, because everyone is betting on that yes vote. I mean, the Swiss franc will go to incredible levels of appreciation if that thing is a yes. I mean, I can't even imagine how far up it's going to go. And it will completely discredit everything the SNB has done in the past decade.
And it could well blast the mining stocks out of their doldrums, too. But we won't go there for right now. That's a whole different issue. Anyway, Andy, we're done for today. MilesFranklin.com. Subscribe to Andy's missives, as well as Bill Holter's and the Schechtmans. And, hey, it's beginning to get interesting, Andy.
It sure is.
All right. Go to FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. Sign up for ours as well. We'll talk to you next week, Andy.
Look forward to it.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.